Welcome to a super packed episode as the tour heads northwards on the home leg. Our tour train stops at Marvao, Monsanto, Oliveira de Hospital and Covilha. Once we reach Covilha, we spend a day circling the Serra da Estrela mountains. On the way, we cross the border twice, in 5 minutes, find our way with some difficulty to a fortress stronghold that's rather closed off. And we have to take in a rather unplanned detour along the way. The views are great, but Steve gets his comeuppance. We make our way to Monsanto, a village doing battle with the landscape. Mike has a moment of the meet your maker variety, and then we get to meet, well, not the maker, but one of his close associates. Finally, we get to travel up the heady heights of the Serra da Estrela to a disused Soviet-era radar base. Our progress, though, is frustrated by a belligerent cow. Confused? You won't be after this next frenetic episode of Sintra or Bust. Things start off pretty smoothly as we make our way northwards from Mérida. Great roads as always. And as I was planning the route, I noticed a rather unusual border crossing, so I diverted the crew to take a look. It turned out that this is the world's shortest international bridge, with one end being in Portugal and the other in Spain. It's only 6 metres long. As you can see, it's not particularly wide either. It's only open to pedestrians and two-wheel traffic, yes, motorcycles, but with the panniers fitted, it was a pretty tight fit for the bikes. Interestingly, this had been a historic site for cross-border smuggling in times gone past, but I guess membership of the EU took all the fun and romance out of that. Now, as Spain and Portugal are in different time zones, an hour apart, and we crossed the bridge and back again in 5 minutes, it's no wonder that it was playing havoc with my sense of timing and my jet lag. Time to get a few miles in, calm the nerves and soothe the soul. It was only a momentary diversion, and soon we were back on the road, headed from Marvao, a fantastically well-preserved medieval fortress on the top of an equally impressive hill. As we headed inexorably towards the Serra da Estrela mountain range, we were treated to some absolutely epic roads, and I couldn't help but think to myself that those who restrict themselves to northern Spain and the Picos were missing out. Fast flowing bends, sunshine, virtually no traffic, and plenty of great scenery. What could be better? It wasn't all plain sailing though, as once again we came across roadworks blocking our path. I think that circular sign may have said no entry, but as always we pressed on regardless.
Did you see that? They went right through our roadblock.
This might not have been our smartest decision, as we certainly got some funny looks from the workers, but we reached Marvao in record time. Mike wasn't at all sure that we were allowed in past the narrow archways, but I knew that our digs were buried deep in the centre of the village. The benefits of research. So I was volunteered into the lead.
Well, no turning back now. Nothing for it but to push on.
I had every confidence in the sat-nav, and I had seen cars parked in the centre of the village, but even so I couldn't help a nagging feeling that we were going to find ourselves going into a dead end. Well, that was just in time. The natives were starting to get restless.
Lots of rear brakes to come in. That's good.
The hotel owner guided us into a parking spot, but there really wasn't much room to spare.
On the boxes go. No.
Ah well, I guess panniers are built to take a knock or two. In the village square, we found a pellerino, an ancient form of punishment, rather like our stocks. A sign nearby explained that no one was executed at the site of the monument. If their fate was serious enough to warrant anything so drastic, well, they were taken beyond the village boundaries. How considerate. In anticipation of drinking more beers than he should, Steve tried on the pellerino for size. Whilst the lads were getting settled in, I took a stroll up to see the castle and fortifications. This was one of my favourite stops. To be able to spend a night in a fortified medieval village on the top of a hill with hugely impressive views was pretty special. As I returned to the village, my impression was that the villagers would certainly be safe from even a concerted attack. The village itself was extremely peaceful, and the views over the surrounding countryside were just fabulous. What a great place to spend a relaxing evening. We had a superb meal and a few beers, and that complemented another excellent day in the saddle. The next morning we pressed on towards Portugal's tallest mountain, the Serra da Estrela, and we were treated to yet more superb roads, although some of them were pretty straight. That's what the Romans did for us. Oh, and every river crossing seemed to boast its own fully intact Roman bridge. I guess Roman carts must have had really good suspension. On the way to the mountain, we stopped to check out a very unusual village, Monsanto. Back in the Middle Ages, it was really important to find a safe location, and hills were an obvious advantage for defence. If there were a few stones hanging about, well, I guess you just lived with them. In this case, the stones were rather large, huge boulders in fact, so the villagers chose to live with them, on top of them, and even underneath them. Back on the road again, and what an afternoon! As we approached the foothills of the Serra da Estrela mountain, the roads got more scenic and much more inviting. With very little traffic to contend with, we indulged in some riding which was a little on the sporty side. That was great until we tackled a sharpish bend with a small bar of sand running across it. Steve and I saw it and rode through it, but Mike saw it at the last second and reacted more dramatically.
Oh!
He stood his bike upright and braked hard, which caused him to run off the corner and face to face with a car coming in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
With the luck of the Irish, and thanks to some timely braking from both parties, he got away with it, the only damage being to his pride. After a timely regroup and a little sober reflection, we were on our way and headed to Oliveira de Hospital, another location high up in the hills, and giving us an opportunity to practice those tight mountain hairpins along the way. Enjoy the dulcet tone of Steve's big old Beamer, burbling away and hardly breaking a sweat as it makes light of these hills. The camera never gives the true impression of just how steep these hills are, but at any point I wouldn't have wanted to get off and stand by the roadside. As we arrived in Oliveira de Hospital, there was a party in full swing. It seemed to be a whole village affair and had the feel of a religious festival with lots of activity surrounding the church. I'm not overly religious, but we'd had a number of close calls so far on the trip, and I figured we could use all the help we could get, so we stopped and showed due reverence to the procession. Well, you never know, do you? As a musician, I was intrigued by the band. It seemed that all of the villagers either belonged to the band or supported it, and the age range was huge. I was also astounded that the players could be entirely out of step, but still playing in time. From Oliveira, we took a route around the foothills of the mountain range, the Serra da Estrela, and we were treated to yet another day of excellent, and in this case, varied riding. We were headed for the city of Covilha on the eastern side of the mountain, and we were booked for 2 nights to allow a run over the central heights the next day. This was a purely riding day. No tourist sites to stop off and see, although that doesn't stop you from pulling over to the side of the road to take in the excellent landscapes.
Oh my gosh.
And once more, onwards and upwards. Where else? It's getting difficult to fault any of the riding roads in this area of Portugal. After a fun day of blasting round the B roads, we have to come back to earth, I guess, and now we're headed down to the city of Covilha, where we're staying for the night. Our hotel was rather plush, and the staff were really friendly and helpful. A good job, I guess. I discovered a problem with my riding trousers. They were starting to delaminate and would never make it home. I asked if they had a sewing kit. They did, but only really fit for sewing on a button to a dress shirt. They actually gave me 2 kits, and they both went into making some temporary repairs to hold the inevitable at bay. We took an Uber into the city centre to get a flavour of the town and found a superb restaurant. But my main impression of the town, or at least the old quarter, was how it was given over to decorative buildings and street art. No rest of the wicked though, and today we're setting off up the mountain towards the Torre da Estrela. The Torre is the tower right at the top of the mountain. Once again, the weather was in our favour. The roads were pretty good quality, and there were plenty of landscape views to take in. Around lunchtime, we stopped off at a tourist spot, which featured bathing pools and a cafe. Oh, for some reason, salt pans. Forging our way ever upwards, the scenery became more magnificent and the weather brighter. I'd never been so close to those massive windmills before. We came across a village full of narrow roads and, of course, cobbles. What else? The village seemed to be a barrier between two climate systems, and as we emerged from it, the weather turned rather ominous. We'd been riding for quite a while when we hit the 1,000 metre mark. There was a bit of a discussion about how tall the mountain was, and the navigation system told us we would arrive at the top in 15 minutes. Now I took a guess at 2,000 metres, and I wasn't far off, but that meant we would climb 1,000 metres, 3,000 feet, in a little over 10 minutes. And it was already getting a bit chilly. Now there's an old adage, where there's cow crap, there are likely to be cows. And indeed, on this road, there were goats as well. Note the health and safety approach to shepherding goats amongst vehicular traffic. And we didn't have to go too far before we found the cow, or rather the bull, to which the cow crap belonged. He lumbered slowly up the road, totally confident that everyone would find their way around him. I guess he wasn't wrong. And in no time, we arrived at the top, having gained that 1,000 metres of height in the process. It was pretty evident that we were up high now. The temperature had dropped dramatically, and we were surrounded by a cold, swelling mist. There was a hotel and a cafe at the top, but I reckon they must have been there for the skiing season. It didn't look too appetising. The focal point of today's ride was the radar towers that had been built in 1957 as a result of Cold War pressure. They've since been decommissioned, I believe in the 70s, and they're preserved as a historical monument. Given today's uncertain political climate, it did occur to me that it wouldn't take much to recommission them. With the weather being rather on the grotty side, we weren't in the mood to hang around too long, so we took pictures of the radar installation, remounted our bikes and set off down the hill for Covilha. The journey down the mountainside was in places truly dramatic, particularly the view to the side of the road looking down at the lake and the mountains beyond. As we descended to a more reasonable altitude, the somewhat barren landscape gave way to green forest, and the temperature rose. A pleasant ending to a brilliant riding day. The last few days has been busy and dynamic, culminating of course in our trip to the top of the mountain. As we returned to our hotel in Covilha, it was strange to think that we'd only got a week or so left of our tour. Join us next time as we make our way further northwards towards the Serra da Luna mountains and the southern Picos, before heading for the ferry at Santander. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget those all-important like and subscribe buttons so you can catch our other episodes.